All right, so back in the 1990s, there was a movie called The Matrix. Anybody here seen The Matrix? Familiar with it? Yep, right, exactly. So there's a scene that's a very iconic scene in which Neo, played by Keanu Reeves, is offered a choice by Morpheus, who's played by Lawrence Fishburne. And his choices are, you could take the red pill or you take the blue pill. And if you remember, if you take the blue pill, you go back to sleep, your life goes back to the way it was, everything's boring, everything's conventional, everything is the way that it was. If you take the red pill, though, your life changes and your perspective on how the world works changes dramatically. And according to Morpheus, you'll see how far down the rabbit hole you can go. And so what I'm hoping to do with this team of people here in this room, on a bright sunny day, a Veterans Day here, 2021, I'm hoping to convince you guys that there's another way, or help open your eyes that there's another way to solve problems that you and I have all been trying to solve by hand for years, decades in accounting. So let's jump right on into it. So earlier this year we did a study, and I'm going to walk around a little bit. I'll do my Phil Donahue impression. Earlier this year we did a study. It's our second study that we did called the Survey of Automation in the Finance Back Office. And we surveyed 600 finance professionals worldwide. And we asked them, hey, what are the things that give you the most heartburn, the most headaches, the most friction in your job? Not surprising, 28% of people said, hey, reduction of repetitive tasks would be the most beneficial to me. 27% of the people, no surprise, said, hey, reduction of manual tasks would be most beneficial to me. And then, luckily for people like me who provide automation solutions, 38% of the people say, hey, we plan to invest in new technologies to improve our processes in the next 12 months. So that's their top priorities. That said, the evolution of finance technology has come a long way. How many here were in the keynote this morning with Aaron Harris? Anybody was in that? Yeah. I loved what he said. In fact, I was in the keynote yesterday with Dan Miller. I loved what they said about automation and bots and AI and machine learning, because we're right alongside Sage Intacct. We are of the same mind when it comes to let's apply a different way to solve these problems. Now, we all remember, well, some of us may or may not. There's a lot of young faces in this audience. But at one point in time, spreadsheets were sheets of paper that you actually had to write out. And the ledger was an actual book. And when you closed the books, you literally put your entries into the general ledger and you closed the book. And that wasn't that long ago. But in the 1960s and 70s, mainframe computers, mini computers came along, and they took that paper-based general ledger and they put that into the mainframe or mini computer. Then along came ERP, and actually along with electronic spreadsheets were, of course, the PC, Microsoft Windows. Everyone here probably uses Microsoft Excel on a daily basis. Some of us remember Lotus 123 version 2.8 with WYSIWYG plugin, or VisiCalc. And that took us a little step further along the journey, the evolution of finance technology. ERP came along. So Microsoft Dynamics, Great Plains. There's a lot of ERP systems that came out during the 1980s. In the 1990s, cloud accounting. Aaron this morning talked about, they were born in the cloud. 1999, they founded the company. June 2000, they launched the company. Intacct stood for Internet Accounting. So cloud accounting software became a thing about 20 years ago. About 10 years ago, something called robotic process automation came about. And RPA, there's a lot of great tools that are out there. It's typically an enterprise play where you've got large companies using RPA. The problem with RPA is it's a horizontal application. It's not really built for finance. It's like a box of Legos you have to build. What we do is the next step, along with Sage Intacct, with cognitive automation. So we are moving forward in this journey of finance technology. So I'm going to jump right to the chase. If you stopped by our booth at any time in the last couple of days and you asked, what makes you different than every other company in this room? There's a ton of people doing finance automation, accounting automation, AP, AR. We are the only company that I know of today that actually sits on top of your accounting mailbox, your AP mailbox and your AR mailbox. Every company on this planet has a shared mailbox for their accounting team. Sometimes it's the same for AP and AR, sometimes it's different. What we do is we've got bots that sit and normally in the blue pill world, your junior accountants would sit there and go through that stupid email box and read every single message, try to decipher what somebody's looking for. Is it a vendor asking for a payment? Is it a customer asking for a copy of the invoice or purchase order? So all of those friction points that I talked about on the survey slide, that's normally done by people. But what we've done is we integrate with Sage Intacct, and there's our little friendly bot, and we do all these things on the AP side, vendor onboarding. We refresh their tax forms, their W-9s. We have something called an AP help desk that actually gets rid of all those questions from vendors. Where's my payment? When am I going to get paid? The bots, believe it or not, can handle 90 to 95% of the questions that come in to the inbox. I'll pause right there and I'll say, about 10 years ago, in fact, exactly 10 years ago in 2011, IBM's Watson defeated Jeopardy champion Ken Jennings. Anybody remember that? Yeah. Ken Jennings was Jeopardy champion, and Watson, and by the way, Watson was not connected to the internet. This was a local database that IBM provided, and so Watson got the chance to answer the questions just the same as the human beings. And we all know how it turned out. Watson won, and then IBM, I think, as a marketer, made a horrible mistake. They thought a little bit too big, and they tried to convince everyone that Watson was going to cure cancer and solve global warming and all that kind of stuff. But here we are 10 years later, and I'm here to tell you that Watson and AI-based bots are really, really good at one thing, and that is understanding a question and providing the best possible answer. And they do it through ranked choice and trying to figure out what people want through semantic, natural language understanding. I'm not going to get into all the details, but if you want to know the details, we've got technical experts who are at our booth 315. And so that's what our bots do. They read those emails, they understand them, they scan the attachments, they bring them into your Sage Intacct instance, and it helps you and your junior accountants do their jobs better. On the AR side of the house, we've got automated collections. I'm going to show you an example of that. We're actually going to talk to a lady who's going to be dialing in from Atlanta to talk to us today about automated collections. We do courtesy notices in Dunning. We do bi-directional communications. The bots send out the 10-day notices. They send out the 3-day notices. They send out the it's due today, it was due yesterday. And with our SmartPay offering, which we just announced a week ago, you can click a button in the email and you can pay by ACH, you can pay by credit card, or in the future, coming next year, you can finance that debt that you have through our SmartPay system. So all of that stuff you're going to see in up close and personal in a real-world example. So, well, how do we do it? We connect to your ERP system. We connect to your either Gmail or your Microsoft 365. We connect to that inbox. We select which ERP system and email system we want to use. We train it, deploy it, and then we optimize. All right. So, I was really amazed when Dan Miller yesterday said, well, we got some new things coming, and one of them is called bank statement to GL matching, or I think what they call bank reconciliation or bank feeds. And he said, yep, it's coming next year. You know, it'll be generally available mid-next year, which again is awesome because that means we are aligned with what Intacct is going to do. That said, we have that today. We do that today. It's not mid-next year. It's not late next year. We have it. You can buy it. We have customers using it, and you're going to hear from one of our customers in London who's going to talk about it. So normally, when you're trying to reconcile your bank statements, you got somebody who downloads the bank statement, you got somebody who pulls the ERP data out, and they got to stare and compare, and they got to say, does this match this? And they have to do it by hand. If it's time-consuming, manual, error-prone, and really not a lot of fun. And throwing bodies at the problem never solves it. It reminds me of about 20 years ago during the election where they had people trying to figure out hanging chads and who voted for whom. That's what I think of when I think of somebody doing bank reconciliations, like trying to figure out what is this? What does this mean? It's horrible. So we don't want to go there. So what we do is we upload a bank statement to our SmartBots, so download it from Wells Fargo or B of A or whomever you use, Silicon Valley Bank. You can upload a matching CSV to the Auditoria SmartBot. That's what our customer does today. The better way to do it is to connect to the API, so you don't have to upload anything. You just press a button and it sucks it in from Intacct. Then you specify which account types you want to include or exclude. And so in this case, direct debit, credit card payment, transfers, those are all listed here, and the bots say, okay, if it's any of these things, I'm going to match them. Then what the bot does is it extracts the rows from the bank statement that match. You can see they're color-coded. The ones in yellow match the card payment. The ones in sort of that salmon color match the transfers. And over here in the general ledger, the JE transaction report, you can actually see, if I build this out, that the SmartBot generates those journal entries for the rows extracted. Now, you could also notice it says 25%. It didn't match 100%. Well, guess what? Not all bank statements exist in the ERP. Not all bank transactions exist in the ERP. Sometimes there's a lag when people get paid. So in this case, they were able to match 25% of the transactions that came out of Intacct. Very cool, saves you a lot of time. So you can then export those files. You can export them through a CSV, which is what our customer does, or better yet, you can connect that directly to the API, the robust and well-documented API from Sage Intacct, and push those transactions directly into your general ledger. So that is bank statement to GL matching. They read the statement, they retrieve the transactions, they match the transactions, and they update your ERP, reducing the time spent, reducing the errors, and keeping your Intacct instance up to date. So now let's talk about the other one that Dan mentioned yesterday, because he literally said, we're doing these two things, and these are literally the two things I came here to talk about this week. So this one is vendor invoice data extraction. So what do? You've got to you get an invoice from a vendor, somebody's got to look at that thing, key it in, transpose things, whatever. And again, just like the previous example, time-consuming, manual, error-prone, and not a lot of fun. And of course, throwing bodies at this particular problem doesn't solve anything for anybody. So how do we solve this problem? Okay. Well, the SmartBot sits on top of that AP mailbox that I talked about earlier. And those bots receive those emails from your vendors. Those emails might have attachments. They might have the invoice right there in the body of the email. We use natural language processing and natural language understanding, just like Watson, to understand what the person's looking for, and then we take action on it. In this case, the SmartBot extracts the key elements from the invoice, like the address, the amount, the date, the line item transactions down below, and then over here, it populates all this information right here, that came out of the invoice. If you're interested, I'll tell you how it works. There's something called structured data and unstructured data. Structured data is like a tax form. Every W-9, every W-2 pretty much looks the same. You got box 1 through box whatever, and all the stuff is in the same locations. Unfortunately, with invoices, no two invoices look alike. Now, I know that Aaron said this morning that they're connecting to the top 10, whether it's Amazon or Domino's or whomever. That's all fine and good. But for most people, they may have a few hundred like oddball vendors. Like if you're a hospital, it's the people who are doing the laundry. If it's a restaurant, it's people who are providing the soap for the dishwashers. You may have 100 vendors that they're not the top 10 in the world. So our bots are smart enough to take all that information, create the journal entry, a draft invoice record, surface it up to a person. That person will then write that back to the ERP system, as we're circling right there, and create that new invoice record in Sage Intacct. And of course, we just push that right in there automatically, and nobody has to key in anything. What does that do? It reduces the time spent, reduces the human errors, the retraining, the typos, and it keeps your information up to date. So what did we see there? They detected a valid invoice, they extracted the key information, they added the coding details, and created the invoice record, all within Sage Intacct. And this is available today. All right. So our customer, Otto Car, is the largest car rental fleet in London. And what they do, I'll just sum it up. If Ali was here, he'd probably correct me on it. They lease cars to Uber drivers. So if you want to be an Uber driver and you don't have a car, they'd be happy to provide you with a lease. You drive around, you make money, and then you pay your lease. So that's what they do. Let's patch in Ali straight from London and have him talk about what they're doing with Sage Intacct and Auditoria.
Yeah, Otto Car is London's largest public carriage office car rental company, helping more than 7,000 PCO certified drivers to rent or purchase a car and drive for the private hire services, including Uber, Bolt, and Free Now. We've been in the business for over 13 years now. Otto Car is committed to supporting PCO drivers to get and stay on the road with Uber certified vehicles and PCO driver support, including its driver development program.
All right. Well, Ali, let me ask you a few questions about that. I know you guys just cut over to Sage Intacct this June from Sage 100, and you implemented Auditoria. What problem were you trying to solve with automation?
Sure. I think what we were trying to solve was how to avoid the high growth processing of the invoices and how to avoid the headcounts because we were trying to avoid the headcounts by not adding too many staff. Mostly manual operations and to how we can close the month end faster and have the more robust reporting.
Well, great. Those sounds like all great functions that you were trying to solve. And I don't know if Ali mentioned it in his previous statement. I missed it, but they process thousands of invoices every single month. All right. So another question, how did you go about selecting the solution?
So we were looking for a company with a modern approach, which has got, of course, the cloud-based accounting, cloud-based system, and also with innovative company. And we were looking to partner with the long term in mind. So we're according to how we are growing.
Well, thanks for that, Ali. And I'm sitting there looking at your background there. Seems like he's very paper-based still. So hopefully we'll solve that problem for him in the next few weeks. All right. A couple more questions, Ali. What prompted you to look at AI for automation?
We knew we couldn't use the human labor to solve this. And again, advancements in AI and ML are touching our everyday lives. Example, Siri, Alexa, and Google. And Sage Intacct gave us that option.
Well, excellent. And I know you guys are expanding. Right now you're in London, you're moving to Amsterdam, you're expanding into Paris. So why don't you talk a little bit, if you would, about some of the results you hope to achieve by using SmartBots for accounting automation?
So we would like to handle the high volume invoice without adding staff, mostly automated operations, and close the month end faster, and of course the more robust cash performance reporting.
So I'm glad you hit on the cash performance, Ali, because we do solve a lot of problems with AP and AR. That's great. If you're a line worker in the accounting department, you care very much about reducing the manual activity, reducing the repetitive stuff, all that. But honestly, there's another thing that we do that I'm not talking about in this presentation, and we manage cash performance. Because we see the money going out through AP, and we see the money coming in through AR, we get a full picture of your cash performance. And with dashboards like DSO reporting, is your day sales outstanding going up or going down? We can alert you if things are trending in the wrong direction. And it's all about cash performance. Right now, every single company, more so during the pandemic, they care about their cash positions and preserving cash. And because we're monitoring both sides of the transactions, we see this in real time. I think this is the last question. Ali, what is your vision for the future? What do you hope to achieve in the next couple of years?
Vision, I would say, is find other friction points to automate. And of course, we are looking for autonomous collections as well, and connect more systems. And also the accounting department guides the business using the cash performance data.
Excellent. I love the cash performance. And I like how you said you were looking for different friction points, specifically autonomous collections. Let's talk about that a little bit, shall we? Autonomous collections. All right. Click. All right. So we have an application called Autonomous Collections. It's in use by hundreds of companies today. Our largest Intacct customer is a BPO or SIAP partner called Concero Global, and they're using it for their customers. So we've got your accounting system on one side, that's your Sage Intacct, your accounting mailbox over there, and then on this side we've got, this is our Auditoria technology. We have our award-winning technology stack using Amazon Web Services for cloud data ops, natural language processing, which is what makes the system understand what somebody's saying. Computer vision is something that we used to call OCR back in the day. It's just scanning data and trying to figure out what are the things in this PDF mean. Machine learning for historical data analysis and forecasting, and of course workflows with integrated handover to human. I have a robot in my house. It's called Roomba, and Roomba does a reasonably good job of vacuuming the floors. It's great. Roomba does it, so I don't have to do it. But about once a day, Roomba gets stuck on the tassels of the carpeting or my guitar cord or something like that, and I got to go over and move the robot, put it in another location, press the button, and then Roomba is off on its own doing the same thing. Don't let anybody fool you. AI is not perfect, and there are always going to be edge cases, even Aaron talked about it this morning, where a human being is going to be able to unravel the puzzle or decipher what the person is looking for. The good news with machine learning is, as Aaron said this morning in his keynote, it's not just code that's programmed to do X. Once you, for lack of a better word, take Roomba, move it to another location, and press the button, our version of Roomba learns from that and says, oh, I'm not going to get caught on the tassels of the carpeting anymore, and I'm certainly going to stay away from that guy's guitar cord over there. So our system has the ability to learn using machine learning to solve the next problem. And it'll get better and better and better the more data you feed it. All right, so let's talk about autonomous collections. This is a really, really cool thing. I interviewed a CFO a couple of weeks ago. And I do a video series called The CFO Corner. And one of the questions I always ask is, hey, what is it like to hire people right now? Is it a challenge to hire new accounting people? And he said, Nick, yes. Number one, we live in Eastern Canada, and nobody wants to move to Eastern Canada, like up in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia. And he said, by the way, these kids who are coming out of college right now, they don't want to do data entry. They don't want to make sure column A matches column B. And they sure as heck do not want to call people on the phone and ask them for money. So I'm sure a lot of you, I see a lot of heads nodding in this room. So what we do is we put our bots on that problem. So why have a human being do it? So we have intelligent payer classification. So our bots are smart enough to know, is this a key account or strategic account, and we're going to treat them differently. We do bidirectional dunning automation. That means not only do we send out the notices, and this is different. Sage Intacct has a collections module that does dunning outward, but we also do dunning inward. So when somebody responds back and says, yeah, I'm disputing the charge, or I need a copy of the PO, or the email bounces, our bots are smart enough to recover from that, take action, and solve that problem so a human being doesn't have to do it. Collector notes, collector CRM with rich notes, trackers and reminders, and audit logs. All that means is our bots are putting data in the same place that your human collectors are looking. So they're all operating from the same data set. Automated collection analytics and metrics tracking, it's an area that is, I guess, historically bad in AR automation, is the tracking metrics, but we provide that. Automated tracking of disputes, automated management of the payment lifecycle, and then last but not least, automated payments and predictive remittance forecasting. Automated payments is what we call SmartPay. I mentioned them a few minutes ago. We just announced it 2 weeks ago. The bots will send out emails with the dunning notices. Right now there's 2 buttons, a green one that says pay by ACH and a blue one that says pay by credit card. And so the human being, we partner with Stripe. I don't have Stripe's logo on here, but if you're familiar with Stripe, we use Stripe on the back end. There's a lot of great payment processing providers out there, but we chose Stripe. That's today's functionality. Coming next quarter, we have a payer portal, and then the quarter after that is that buy now, pay later, or it's called FlexPay. So the ability to finance your debt using our system. And then, of course, it all connects together through the APIs. All right, we are in the home stretch. So I'm going to show you how it works with this fancy PowerPoint presentation. The AR analyst logs in and selects autonomous collections. Then they set up classifications for regular accounts and key accounts. After that, they enroll accounts for collections. In this case, Main Street Cafe is a key account. And then the human operator, the AR analyst in this case, presses the run button. Now, the bots are off to the races. They're sending out those dunning notices. They're sending out the invoices with attachments. And the people are responding. So I need a PO. I'll pay today. I'll pay next week. Dispute. I just paid it. Invalid email. Well, the person wouldn't say invalid email. It would just bounce back. But you get the idea that there's green conditions like, okay, all is good. Yellow conditions like warning that the bots can normally handle. And then red conditions like, oh, okay, I got to elevate this to a human being like my Roomba and see if we can solve this problem, find a new email address, or initiate a dispute. Okay, so people respond back with those responses. It all goes into our system. And then the prioritized work list shows which invoices need attention. In this case, we had 2 of them that were good, 2 of them that the bots are going to handle, and then 2 of them that need to be elevated to a human being in this example. So the bots write the information into Auditoria and then eventually into your Sage Intacct ERP, and then now the bot initiates the workflow for the dispute. Maybe it's a short pay, maybe the person didn't get the full order, maybe it got delivered to the wrong address. We don't want bots handling disputes. I think we're all on the same page there. We want human beings handling disputes. So the bot, again, elevates that to a human with human handover. All right, so User Testing is a Sage Intacct customer in San Francisco. They're a technology company. They've got a small but innovative AR team, and we are going to be joined right now by Jen Collins, live from Atlanta, to talk to us about user testing. All right, Jen?
Thanks, Nick. And 100% relate to you on the Roomba story. I know mine always tells me it's stuck on a cliff whenever it comes to like a stair or something. So always have that need for human intervention just a little bit. So just to give you a little bit of background on user testing. So we are a company that really is a SaaS-based company focused on giving our customers the human insight to basically anything that they can put on a web platform. So it's a really fantastic product that we've seen a lot of explosive growth over the last three or so years. So growth is in employees, so here are about 500 plus, but we are growing every single day. And in our revenue, that year-over-year growth that we've seen. So currently we do use a SaaS-based accounting system. But we were still, that 40% year-over-year growth also relates to invoice growth and the amount of transactions that we have at the company. So our AR team was very small, but we definitely started to see a need for more and more staff to handle the manual collection processes. So here kind of, lending to a little bit more in-depth description of our business problem. We had the high growth in our volumes, really didn't have any way to scale with that other than just add bodies to it. But then you've got training issues, and you've got to make sure that, people are getting ramped up appropriately. And we really just were having trouble keeping up with those, having the manual processes. I feel like that's just going to happen. So then that leads to lack of response from customers. It leads to them, nobody really wants to pay a bill, they do it because they have to. So, we started to see that customers just really weren't paying. And our outreach was only happening once an invoice was already overdue. So we were really not seeing any of that proactive account management at that point in time. And then it was also, even if we had customers that we knew were slow payers or needed sort of white glove treatment, we had no way to really identify, hey, this customer just closed a new upsell deal with us. Let's go ahead and get ahead of this invoice and see what we can do. So really had a myriad of issues here, but really all because of manual process.
Well, thanks for that, Jen. A couple of questions. So I'll ask you the same thing I asked Ali a few moments ago. What prompted user testing to look at AI-based automation for collections?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the business issues that I identified in the last slide, the increasing of volume, but really no way to handle that scale other than to hire employees. So hiring resources is a time-consuming process. You have to train your resources. Obviously, not everybody's going to be the highest performer that you have, so you have to also deal with any sort of employment issues. But all of that, what was really happening at the core of it is we were seeing an increase in the amount of overdue invoices that we had in our business. Our days sales outstanding metrics were really escalating quickly. And as a startup company, it's really important that we also maintain a good forecast and flow on our cash. And we're really seeing that decreased cash flow, which in the long run hurts us. And so that was why we really said, okay, what can we do to fix this problem? What automation can we put in place? So we stopped just hiring people, and we really find a solution that's going to scale with our growing volume.
Yeah, I really liked what you said there about not having to hire people and train people and recruit people. That's kind of the blue pill way of doing things. At Auditoria, we're looking at this problem entirely differently from a red pill perspective to try to solve this without trying to hire a bunch of people and get on that treadmill of constantly trying to keep people motivated and trained and up to speed and up to date. So another question for you, Jen. What were the results, if you could share any with us, about using the bots for collection automation?
I think the most immediate result we saw was customers actually paying before or on our invoice due date. Really that became a result of I would say, calling them proactive automated messages that were being sent out. I mentioned in sort of our old world, we really weren't reaching out to customers to figure out why they weren't paying until the invoice was overdue. But with our automation, customers were contacted, prior to the due date multiple times so we could identify any issues that would result in a delay in payment. So if we were missing purchase orders, had a wrong billing address or different contact information, even we could identify sales tax corrections that were needed that were holding up payment. So that was definitely the most immediate benefit. Also just really seeing that scalability and really seeing that like a bot can contact thousands and thousands of people in the amount of time we would have reached out to 10. And it just really shows the huge benefit and time saved for us as well.
Yeah, so to repeat what Jen just said, you may not have heard her, but she said her bots can send out thousands of email messages in the amount of time it takes a human being to send out 10. The bots don't sleep. They work 24/7. If somebody responds at midnight or 2 in the morning, the bots reach into your ERP system, reach into Sage Intacct, provide a copy of the PO, solve the customer's problem. So that's a totally different way of thinking about things. I'll also like to highlight something that might not be clear in what Jen said. When she said our days sales outstanding has gotten better because people are now paying on time or ahead of time because they're responding to the proactive notices that they weren't sending out before. Now, that's not an AI-based thing. That's just a process thing, right? They send out the messages a week ahead of time, and you're going to probably collect more money faster. But what the bots do that human beings have a hard time with is, if I'm a late payer and I'm paying after the deadline, well, you know it, right? Because I'm overdue. You can see that I'm in arrears, and you can see how many days and the amount and things like that. But what the bots can do is, if somebody is an early payer, and let's say they pay 10 days earlier regularly, but then because of the pandemic or supply chain issues or whatever, they only pay 5 days early. And then the next month after that, they only pay 3 days early. Now, they're not late, they're not overdue, they're not in arrears, but their DSO is trending in the wrong direction. And the bots will then notify a human being, hey, here's an area that you may want to take a look at, because people are still paying early, but they're paying less early than they were before. That's a really hard thing for people to get their heads around. Human beings are really bad at that, but bots are really good at it. And so that's one of the things that's helped Jen tremendously. So she told me when I spoke with her on a webinar, she said, since going live with Auditoria, our DSO and collections have never been better. Now I have time to do the things that really matter. And what does that mean? Well, instead of calling people and asking for money, now she can provide analysis and guidance to the business. As Ali said, we want to improve our cash performance. We want to be the business partner in the accounting team that helps drive the business forward. So I'll end with one last matrix reference here. So if you do decide to take the AI journey with us, your team will acquire superpowers. They can see farther, they can see around corners, they can move faster, they can lift heavy objects that they never thought they could lift before, because the bots are doing all the work. So with that, I think we've got a ton of time here for questions. I'll open up to audience Q&A. You can ask anything you want. All right. Carla.
What does your vendor onboarding process look like?
Okay, what does our vendor onboarding process look like? Do you mean when we acquire customers, or when our customers bring vendors on board? Okay, awesome question. So with the invoice data extraction thing that I told you about earlier, where a vendor sends an invoice, I'll give you a really cool thing that I think is amazing. The bots will look into Intacct and say, is this vendor somebody who we have in our vendor list? Actually, we connect to Bill.com as well. If you keep your master vendor list in Bill.com or Intacct, doesn't matter. First thing the bot does is this a legit account? Is this a legit vendor that I should process a payment for? If not, if it doesn't see that new company in there, then a workflow gets initiated. Okay, I'll hold my hand up for the foul, because I'm a marketing person. And marketing people are notorious for signing agreements, signing up new vendors, and guess what? They never tell the accounting team. They never tell the finance team. You get an invoice out of the blue. You don't know who it's from. We do that all the time, and I try to be better about it, but in this case, what happens is the bot surfaces that up to a human being and says, Carla, we got an invoice. This person doesn't exist in the Sage Intacct. Do you approve of this vendor being created in the system? And you can say yes or no through email. And then you can also add a few other lines in there, like yes, set them up, put them in this category, put them in this account. This is what this is for. Is it a software expense? Is it a whatever? The categorization of the expenses. And then it kicks it back to the bot. Here's where it gets cool. The bot then reaches out to the vendor and says, okay, we're going to set you up as a new vendor. I'm going to need your W-9. So the person then attaches the W-9 as a PDF into the email and replies back to the bot. And at this point in time, that vendor has no idea they're talking to a bot. They think they're talking to a person. Then the bot gets that W-9 and validates it. So I live in California, but if it came through with a Nevada address but a California zip code, the bot says, invalid data, kick it back to the vendor and say, I think you've got an issue with the address, please update and resend it. So once it collects that W-9, then it's similar to the invoice data extraction. It's a lot easier with W-9s because all the boxes are in the right places, right? It just pulls that information out, sets up the vendor in our system in Auditoria, and then you, Carla, would say, yes, I'm going to create this vendor in the master vendor list, whether it's in Bill.com or Sage Intacct. I could actually do a whole presentation on vendor onboarding. It's pretty cool. Other questions? How much does it cost? How long does it take to implement? How do you train the bots? How are the bots so good at understanding English? That's a good one. I could talk about that. So the bots actually are trained in 3 types of English: normal conversational English, business English, and finance English. So there are lots of open source libraries that are out there. I'm sure Aaron and his team at Sail have, they could talk all day about open source libraries for natural language, but they use data sets. And if you have a data set, you can train the bots using a robust data set. For our business English data set, we use something called the Enron data set. Again, let's flash back to the early 2000s. If you remember Enron, there's a huge debacle. Those of us who are accountants or in accounting, we remember that there used to be the big 5 accounting firms, and now there are only 4. That's because Arthur Andersen fell by the wayside because of Enron or WorldCom or somebody like that. But because of that, 400,000 emails became part of the public domain. Those emails became part of an open source data set that we can use to train our bots to understand business English. Now, my sincere hope is that our bots are not corrupt and trying to cook the books, but that's how we train them for business English. For finance English, we use another data set that teaches them words like accruals. Normal people don't use the word accrual. Accounts payable, accounts receivable, different synonyms, dunning, collections. So all of those things that could come in through that email, we have that finance English grammar library that the bots can use to try to figure out the intent of what the person's trying to do. Question over here. All right. Sharif?
Yeah, thanks. So I'll piggyback a little off your question, but in that example, if there's more customized steps to that process, for instance, you might need to do a TIN check, or a vendor is sales tax exempt, right? Exemption forms. Is the workflow customizable as well as the bots, or are they standard workflows with highly customizable bots?
Excellent question. So today, they're fairly standard. However, everything in the system can be customizable. In fact, a lot of what we do with our onboarding of our new customers, our new Sage Intacct customers, we connect up to the ERP in like 5 minutes. We're a user on Intacct. We connect to the API as a user, and all those rights and privileges that user has tells our system what we can see and what we can access. That's the easy part. Most of our implementation time, which is about 2 to 3 weeks, is mapping our fields to the fields you've created in Intacct. And every single one of you guys in this room, I'm sure, has custom fields, custom objects, custom things. We've all tricked out our Intacct instances. And so we map those custom fields and properties and flows to what we're doing here. And so we can and we do tweak that for a number of customers. In fact, for Otto Car, the thing that they asked for that we didn't have was line item detail. So with their vendor invoice data extraction, we were able to pull all that information out, but they said, oh, that's great and fine, but we're a rental car company. So we've got companies that we work with that do oil changes and tire rotations, and there's a dent in the front bumper and whatever. So they wanted line item detail. So we were able to customize the application for them to allow for line item data extraction within those invoices. So your question is, I'll just sum it up by saying, out of the box, it does a certain number of things. If you want anything customized or tweaked, we do that all day long for every customer because every instance is different. Thanks for the question, Sharif. Other questions? How much does it cost? How much does it cost? So we base our pricing based on the transactional volume. So if you're a big company with lots of transactions, you pay more. If you're a medium-sized company, you pay less. If you're a small company, you pay less. Our philosophy at Auditoria is that our application should not cost more than your Sage Intacct subscription. Because your ERP is the core of your accounting system. We plug in to Sage Intacct and a number of other great providers out there. And so we base it on the size of the company, the transactional volume, and then basically how many skills. We have a platform, and then each of those skills that I mentioned earlier, today I described 3 of them: bank statement matching, vendor invoice data extraction, and automated collections. Each of those is purchased a la carte. So you pay for what you want, you don't pay for what you need, and it's an annual subscription or a monthly subscription, just like Sage Intacct. So thanks for the question. Other questions? How do I get an awesome Auditoria shirt or mug or cigar? Anybody go to the cigar rolling last night? Yeah? Did you enjoy it? Yeah, that was amazing. I've never seen a handmade cigar before, but that guy was awesome. So we had handmade cigars, hand-rolled cigars in our booth last night and the night before, but unfortunately they're all gone now. But sorry, got your hopes up. But you can swing by the booth and get a mug or a Yeti cup or any number of giveaways that we have. I'll open up the floor to one last question. Anybody? All right, well, on behalf of Auditoria and Sage Intacct, I'd like to thank you for spending the time with me today. Please stop by our booth, booth number 315, for a demo. If you want to ask technical questions, I'd be happy to arrange a technical expert for you. And with that, enjoy the rest of your day at Sage Transform.